Hey guys, it's Kevin, another movie for you guys. Now, this movie reviewing, this is a movie that I've wanted to see for a while. I just never got a chance to watch it till now. I don't know why it took me so long to watch it, but finally I have seen it, and that is a movie that was supposed to come out back in March, I remember, but it was actually removed from theaters and then it was put onto Netflix, and that movie is The Little Prince, which is, like I said, a movie that I've wanted to watch for a while. I remember just like Hell or High Water, I didn't see the trailer till I edited the video, but once I saw that trailer, that was one of those trailers that I just kept coming back to. I couldn't stop watching it. I thought it was an incredible trailer. I thought it had this incredible message, and I just couldn't wait to see this movie, and I was definitely really looking forward to it. And I have to say that while The Little Prince is a great movie, I was a little let down by this movie. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think this is a bad movie. I think it is a great movie in its own regard, but I don't think it's as good as it could have been. The Little Prince is a very flawed film, but there are a lot of really good things about it, and I'll talk about that. But let's get to the plot of The Little Prince, because the plot of this movie is actually really interesting, because if you know the story of The Little Prince, which is one of the most famous short stories in the world, which isn't that famous since I've never heard of it, but basically, the story of The Little Prince, that was the story. They added a story to this movie to make it more of a movie, make it more of a cohesive experience, and basically the plot of this movie is we focus on this young girl played by Mackenzie, and her mother is, she's going to this thing called Worth Academy, basically to prove her worth, and her mother, played by Rachel McAdams, is basically the most career-driven, overbearing mom you could possibly think of. I mean, she is as overbearing as one of the most overbearing moms I think you'll see in a while, but she is constantly focused on, her daughter's future, and she's focused on, her being an adult, and she doesn't really want her to just live in the moment, and because of that, her daughter very much the same way. This is a town where not many people are focused on the past. They're all kind of just focusing on being adults and things like that. However, she has this neighbor that she finds very strange. She doesn't really know what's going on with him, but he starts sending her these notes about this book called The Little Prince, and she basically becomes kind of entranced by it when she starts to find different items and things like that, and she starts to go over to her neighbor's house, played by Jeff Bridges, to basically figure out if the Little Prince story is real, and basically try to figure out why he's telling it to her, and that basically is the plot of The Little Prince in a nutshell. Now, there is a different story surrounding The Little Prince, but that actually is the main story in this movie, which I actually really do love the plot. I think it really does make sense why they put it in there. But anyways, let's get more on The Little Prince, starting off with the acting, because the acting is really something I do want to talk about. Now, something, like I said, that I really do love about this movie is the cast. I mean, whether you want to see us or not, this cast here is just fantastic. You have such a great cast, but I think the standout here, for me at least, was Mackenzie Foy. I think she absolutely killed it in this role. I really love what I've seen her in. She was in Interstellar and also Breaking Dawn Part 2, one of the only good things about that movie. But she really was great here. I really did love her character, because this is a little girl that's kind of been brainwashed a little bit. She's basically been believed to think that everything is boring, and that there is no, and that when you grow up, you become boring, and you don't have imagination, and you don't have memories, and she really just is the most plain girl you could think of, and she's also very smart, but she looks at things very logically, and I really did like the journey that her character goes on, and especially once she finds out about the story of The Little Prince, and she becomes much more obsessed with it, she really wants to try to see if it actually is true, and I thought that's really when she became a lot more interesting. I really did like her character overall, and the way that she embodies her mother, I thought was really interesting the way they did that. I mean, these two basically practically are one and the same. They do pretty much everything together, and it was very interesting to watch, but I really liked her character. I thought she did a great job, and for me, I really think she stole the show. I thought she really was fantastic, but I think just as good as her was Jeff Bridges. I like, which is interesting, because in Hell or High Water, of course, Jeff Bridges was in that. He was just as great here. I really do love his character. Obviously playing a much different character, but the Aviator is still a great character. And the thing I love the most about his character is this is an old man that really has kept those memories intact. And he's someone that does want to, he does have that childlike, whimsical feeling still in him, which I thought was interesting to see. I thought they build up the Aviator's character really well. He's kind of like the creepy neighbor at first. You don't really know what's going on with him. And that was something they did really well, especially in this town, like I said, that is full of just boring and no imagination. You have this eccentric, old man who everyone thinks is just such a creeper because obviously they don't want anyone to be different, and he is someone that's different, and that's something else I think they did very well, is, really put yourself out there. I thought that was very well done. And I really did love the relationship between these two, because as weird as it sounds, they really do have this genuine bond, and you can really understand why these two bond so well. He really opens her up to a lot more fantasy type things, and I really did like the relationship overall, and the story surrounding the Aviator I thought was really interesting. I really like what they did with him. I thought he really did a great job. My main complaint with this movie is that I feel a lot of the characters in this movie were either very underused or just really didn't need to be here, especially Rachel McAdams. I thought she was extremely underused in this movie as the mother, and why I found her to be extremely one-note. Most of her character is, oh, look at your life plan. Oh, you can be with this old man, but look at your life plan. Look at your life plan. It's the same. It's thing with her the whole movie, and it just felt very much just like a recurring thing. She felt more like a plot device than she did a full-fledged character, and I wanted to go a little bit more in depth with her character. Maybe have her and the Aviator have interaction. I just felt they could have done more with her, and that's one of the things that I just didn't think worked as well in this movie as they wanted it to. And I didn't think that really worked at all. I did like characters like the Fox and the Rose, James Franco, Marion Cotillard. I like those characters overall, but they just didn't leave much of an impact on me because they don't really do too much in this movie. They're in the movie for a couple scenes, and then they just kind of go away. The movie really is anchored by Mackenzie Foy, the Prince, who I think the Prince was very good. Riley Osborne did a very good job as the Little Prince. But like I said, the standouts for me really are Mackenzie Foy and Jeff Bridges. I thought they both did a very good job. They both really do anchor this movie, and you definitely do see that here. So really the thing I think that does make this movie, I think, as good as they were, the directing here by Mark Osborne, I really did appreciate, because this really isn't your typical animated movie. If you're looking for a fun animated movie filled with a lot of laughs and colorful characters, this movie has that, but it's definitely more of a drama, and I really appreciate that, actually. I haven't really seen an anime movie for kids, that is. I mean, of course, Anomalisa, but I'm talking about a movie for kids that was a drama, and I thought it was interesting the way that Mark Osborne did that. I really like the tone he set for this movie. I mean, this is a tone where, like I said, the world's very dreary, and it's very gray, and I thought that was something that was done very well. There are a few, humorous scenes in here, but they're more like chuckles. You're not really gonna laugh a lot. You might chuckle, and you might think, oh, that's cute, but you're not really gonna think, oh, that's, a really fun movie. It's definitely more of an insightful type film, and I definitely really appreciate that. The screenplay here, I do think, is a bit jumbled, and some of this is nitpicking, I'm not gonna lie, but I will say, the story here, I think, was actually pretty genius what they did, because if they were to tell, the story of the Little Prince and just have that be the movie, it just wouldn't really stick out. There have been so many different adaptations at this point that it just would feel like, the same thing, but this sticks out like a sore thumb in a good way, though. They wanted this to be more of a tribute to the Little Prince and less of just a Little Prince movie, and I really like the way they did that. I thought they're really trying to show the way the story is really supposed to impact a generation, and I didn't feel like the message was shoved down our throats. I thought it was a good message overall, because yeah, when you get older, sometimes you do have to put some of those childish things away. Sometimes you do forget about these childish things, but you need to remember it, and that's really what the movie's really trying to say, and I really did love that. I did think the message was repeated maybe a bit too much. I think they did talk about it a bit too much. There were especially some scenes I think went on a bit too long, and my biggest problem with this movie, though, like I said, I think most of this movie was really great. My biggest problem with this movie, without a doubt, though, is the third act. I really was not a fan of the third act of this movie. For a while, I really wasn't. It goes in this really weird direction that I really don't know what they were thinking. It just seemed like they wanted to add more emotion and more conflict to the story, and in the end, it really didn't serve much of a purpose, and it really didn't, I think, serve the movie very well either. It kind of detracted from what they were trying to do, and it really didn't work in the way I think they wanted to. But other than that, I thought the story was very interesting, and like I said, I think that was something they did very well. The most impressive thing, though, with this movie, not just the screenplay, I think the idea to have this new story was good, but the animation in this movie is something that I really do want to talk about, because the contrast of typical 3D animation to stop motion, I thought was really cool the way they did that, because the stop motion world obviously looks a lot different from the 3D animated world, and the difference between those two worlds is one of the most interesting parts of this movie. That world's a lot more colorful, there's a lot more detail in that world. However, the 3D world is just kind of boring. It's like any other city you've been to, and I think it worked pretty well. That was definitely what they were trying to get across, and I definitely really did like that. I thought the animation really looked great here. The score was really good as well. I think the score was a little too childish, I definitely will say that, but I did like the score overall. A little bit too much of the ba-da-deep, ba-da-doop. That song's really catchy, that's played throughout the movie. A little too much of it for my taste, but I did like the song overall. And then the editing to this movie, I'm not gonna lie, I think was a bit choppy. I really was. Well, oh, by the way, let me get back to the score. Hans Zimmer obviously did the score. The score is great because it's Hans Zimmer. I'm talking about the song they played. That's kind of what irritated me. But the editing here, I thought, really was a little bit choppy at points, because they'll do this thing where, you know, the aviator starts talking about the little prince, and then we cut immediately back to the little girl, and it just didn't really work, because those two stories didn't really feel separate, and I wanted them to feel separate, and they really didn't. I wanted to see more of the little prince's story, and we didn't really get to do that. And I get that the movie, like I said, is supposed to be more of the little princess kind of just in the story, and it's more supposed to be like a symbolism thing, but it just didn't really work in the way they wanted to. That part of the movie, I think, didn't really work, and I think some points it just felt a little bit choppy. But like I said, that really is a nitpick. So like I said, my main problem with this movie is the ending. I think the ending to this movie was really good. I definitely really liked the way the movie ended, but some things in the third act, I think, just got a little bit too silly, a little bit too complicated, and really did detract from the story. The other message that I really like that this movie's trying to get across is the whole message of imagination. And I mean, this is a child that looks at everything in a logical sense, as does everyone. You know, her mother, once she makes this friend, says, okay, you can have this friend, but you need to focus on your career. She's very, like I said, career-oriented, and the movie really tells you to think outside the box and think, you know, with your heart. Don't think with your head, think with your heart. And yes, it's a message you've heard in many movies, but it works very well here, and I think the heartwarming stuff they got done very well. Some of the stuff in the third act was a bit cheesy, but the very end of the movie, I was actually surprised it got emotional as it did. I honestly was kind of on the verge of tears at some points in the movie, because it really does get quite dark, and when it gets dark and it's not afraid to go for those dark moments, I really do applaud the movie for that. I really think it did that in a really good way. I really was surprised with how dark the movie did get, but I think it needed to be as dark as it was in order to convey the message it did, and it's one of the best things about the movie by far. But other than that, guys, I really did love The Little Prince. I thought it was a really great movie. I think it's really something that it's a great movie to, you know, watch with your children. They might actually not really understand the message. I think it's a very mature message that adults, I think, will honestly understand more than children. Like, if you're a teenager, say my age, I think you'll understand this movie a lot more than, say, a child would. I think it definitely does appeal to a child, but you're going to get something more out of it if you're a teenager, and I definitely would say that. But either way, I'm still going to give The Little Prince a 4.5 out of 5 or an A-. I really did love this movie overall. I thought there was some really great stuff here. I thought, like I said, the characters were really well done. It's just because of the underused characters and the stuff in the third act and the movie being a bit choppy, it just wasn't as good as I thought it could have been. It's a great movie, don't get me wrong. I think it's definitely something to check out and definitely worth something to, you know, think about. It's really a movie that you'll take a lot from, and you might actually, I think, be a little bit surprised by how deep the movie really does get. But some of the things, I think, weren't as subtle as I wanted to be. I think the message was shoved down our throats a bit. But other than that, I really did love it. I think it was a very great movie, and with a very good message, and something that definitely really did surprise me. It was a lot different than I thought it was going to be, but just as impactful and insightful as I think they want it to be. But overall, guys, Marion, The Little Prince, let me know what you guys thought of this movie. Have seen it, love to share your thoughts on it. I really did love this movie overall, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for Pretty Little Liars. I know I need to review 2 episodes, but I will review those 2 episodes, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.